Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for choosing my channel. And yes, we're going to continue to explore the wide world of pens. And this is a pen you've seen before, but this is the gold version. You saw the rhodium plated silver version earlier. I'm not going to go through an unboxing or any of that other details. We're just going to look at this. We're going to appreciate the beauty of this pen. And I'm also going to talk about some of the aspects of this pen that other people have found that I can't replicate, like the cap unscrewing the section. So we're going to look at that in detail. But I just think this is great. We got some afternoon sun that's coming in that's going to be reflecting off that very well polished skeleton overlay that's over a clear acrylic. And to me, the clear and gold is a great color combination. I like the green and silver that I got with the first pen, and this one I wanted clear. And yes, this pen was provided to me by Asvine with no expectations of anything, but to me, it would be remiss of me not to share this pen with you. So as it twirls around, hopefully you appreciate all that glitter and shine. And again, it's a pen that you can either love or hate it, but I like looking at it. So with the silver version of this pen, it has a substantial weight to it. Is it too heavy? Not in my mind and not in my hand. There is a lot of weight in the cap, so as you uncap it, the pen becomes, I think, a very manageable weight. As I mentioned with the silver one, a lot of people might equate weight with quality. You know, it's heavier, therefore it's a better quality. So it's one reason for, I think, the weight of the pen. And also they used a lot of metal pieces in their brass. And they did that for probably a number of reasons. Number one, availability of brass and the ability to machine it and to plate it so that it comes out with this phenomenally consistent plating on the pen has a lot to do with the material that they chose to use. And when you're making something like this, that you're going to make a number of them, thousands of them, you have to take into account material availability and also the ability of your manufacturing facilities, whether they're subcontracted or owned by yourself, to be able to produce this pen, reproduce it, and make all of them to exacting quality standards that you've set. And I think Asvine has done a very good job at a quality pen. So we're going to explore some of the features of this pen that I think need to be looked at further. So I mentioned I watch reviews, and some people have discussed about their sharp edges to these cutouts. And when you press down on your hand and run them across, you can feel that edge. Could it have been rounded? Oh, absolutely. Did they round it? No. But during normal use of the pen, you don't feel it. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's not an important feature, and definitely it's there, but it is of no consequence as far as the writing experience or enjoying the visual beauty of the pen, which to me is its two main attributes. Just wanted to show that the nib and feed pulls out easily from the section, and to me that's good to be able to clean the pen out. You know, just put a syringe in there, flush water in there, should be able to clean out the barrel very easily. Yes, you can hear that vacuum. The pens do work well. And it's a nicely designed nib. consistent gold plating on both sides, and that is small for medium in my mind. That stylized M is an interesting approach that they use to identify the size of the nib. I think we need to compare it to the fine nib in the silver tone one. Yes, it's a slightly larger amount of tipping on there, but I wouldn't say significant. Well, there's a couple aspects of the pen that we can observe now that I have two of them. And one of the marketing claims was that the skeleton filigree was hand cut. And I would say these are identical. So I would say that's more representative of a machine that punched out the shapes. The original design obviously was probably hand done, but both the cap and barrel have the identical cutouts in them. I think visually both of those clips look to be very straight. I haven't done anything to move them around. You know, they're fairly secure. You know, anything can be bent out of shape, but as received, these two pens are in good shape. So I watch other reviews because I think it's important to gain as much insight into a pen, and also maybe I miss something when I review a pen. So there seems to be some controversy over the fact that when you unscrew the cap, it's going to unscrew the section. So this pen has been in constant use since I got it, and it's been used by a couple people, so they've all had their opportunities to cap and uncap multiple times, and never once has the section ever unscrewed. I have that cap as tight as it's going to get. There's only so much you can screw down the cap because that section's going to be against that little ledge inside there. And as we see, it just unscrews. I've never had this section unscrew when I'm taking off the cap. So I can't explain why this seems to be an issue with some people, but based on this design, I can't imagine how that can happen because this section takes a lot of effort to unscrew it. Fine threads and an O-ring. And since the gold one is uninked, we're going to do some experiments because I think it's important to experiment and determine if my theory about this pen is correct, in which case there's no reason for that section ever to unscrew when you take off the cap. I'm going to use this gold pen uninked to show why I think that this section and cap design and threading is done very, very well, engineering and build. So this does unscrew, but it takes a tremendous amount of effort. I can't do it with just my fingers. I have to get a rubber gripper. So I got two because I'm going to have to hold the barrel and the section. So let's try it again. There we go. So it took an unbelievable amount of torque to get this to unscrew. And once it unscrews, it comes out relatively easily. You can see those very fine threads in that O-ring. And when this is in there tight, it doesn't come out easily. That last final turn. So even though these threads are on the section, these are big block threads. So if you think about the amount of surface of these very fine threads, and this is acrylic on acrylic, and this is acrylic on metal, and this is plated metal. So the amount of resistance in these threads is significantly less than the resistance that the threads in that O-ring provide for the section. So we'll again go through the process. Now that cap is as tight as it's going to get. We uncap. It's just not going to happen. I can't explain why other people seem to have a problem with this, but I think this is a great design. I've labeled it as maybe it's a Great White North phenomena. Who knows? But I've done everything I can do to try to replicate it, and I can't replicate it. And as you can see, I cannot take off that section with my fingers without using a rubber gripper. And there's no way with these cap threads that you're going to be able to unscrew this section with that cap and those threads. So that's the experiment done before your eyes, live on camera. If someone can explain why that might happen when I don't see how it can, please leave me a comment. Waiting to put in the gold skeleton pen. Well, I wanted to stick with the same type of ink that's in the silver green one, so we're going to do Lamy turquoise. And Lamy is very good at not labeling their boxes, but there is a label at the bottom. And they do have a color of a cap that kind of is similar to the color of the ink, so that's what's going in the pen. I think it's very nice to watch this vacuum filler fill. So we're going to go through those steps. Unscrew the cap. Unscrew the blind cap. Takes a few turns till eventually you can pull up the piston all the way to the top. And I suggest inserting it halfway up the section so when you push down on the piston and it pulls up the ink, it doesn't starve the ink if it gets below the end of the section. We're going to put it in to the bottle of ink, hold the nib slightly above, and go. That's how it works. Pretty simple. Just physics at work. Let's take a look at the fill that you get from one pump, one down of the piston versus two, which I did on the silver pen. There's a little bit more ink in there, and the silver pen has been in use for a week or two, so it's probably dropped a little bit less than a half a mil, but I would say you could probably get another mil of fill by just doing another fill by inverting the pen, bringing the piston up, and then filling the pen again. I do enjoy watching the ink slosh around inside this skeleton, and I appreciate the clear acrylic, which doesn't taint the ink color, but I can enjoy both of these for what they offer you visually and also from that filling system, which gives you a decent amount of ink. Nice looking pens. So I've done some editorial comment on the pen and talked about its features, but I think one of the aspects that intrigues me about this pen is it certainly has the look and feel of a very high-end quality pen. And if it had another brand name on it, and maybe came with a gold nib or more variety of nibs, then this pen would be getting a much different response from many people. And to me as a pen lover, I don't care what name is on the pen. I care about how I feel about the pen, how it writes, how well I enjoy using it. And, you know, they're kind of like works of art, and how much does it aesthetically please me? And this pen does a lot of those things. Same dimensions as the silver one, so we'll give you those. And even though that section is slightly slippery, I wouldn't call it extremely slippery. There's been many pens that this section was more slippery, but the curve is done very, very well, that your fingers have no problem staying in one spot, holding that nib exactly where you want to hold it. And it fits well unposted, and it's not a pen I would post if you even could jam on that cap. So let's compare this medium nib with the fine nib and see how they write. So let me say right off the bat, this medium nib is excellent. I love it. It does have a little bit of a stub-like quality to it, and it's also softer in my hand than the fine nib was. So I think it's interesting that they produced a second nib, and there's 3 nibs. There's also an extra fine, which I probably will not experience. But for me, someone who wants a little bit of variation in their lines, a little bit of bounce to the nib, this one suits the bill. And you can see a very fine line, no pressure, and as you increase pressure, it opens up. Not something I would do on a regular basis, but as you can see on some of the squigglies up here, it does give you some interesting character to your writing. Let's compare it to the fine nib. So before we do a comparison writing sample, let's look close up at these nibs. The medium one definitely has more tipping on it, and I'm impressed about what they did. I mean, to me, to the eye, it's a subtle difference, but the real key is how does it look when it lays down the ink. There's definitely a big difference in my hand between these 2 nibs. The fine nib has that standard amount of feedback that you would expect from a smaller nib. For my hand, it doesn't feel as good on the paper as the medium nib, but then I like a wetter nib with a broader line, so I would be normally predisposed towards the medium nib. But the fine nib as it is, for me, everyday carry, a pen that you're going to be maybe writing on some paper that may not be the best, this fine steel nib would do a great job. I'm not writing in reverse because both of these nibs are not reverse writers, and if I wanted to do reverse writing with them, I would have to do some smoothing and working on the nib, which I have no desire to do. But I'm impressed with how these 2 nibs differ. And the medium nib is super smooth, so if you like a smooth nib, I certainly would recommend the medium nib over the fine, and I'm assuming the extra fine would just be the fine nib with a much thinner line. So now let's rate this pen, and I'm going to give it a 9.7. Probably higher than I gave the silver version. The rankings are how I feel right now with this pen in my hand, and the first thing I'm going to say is this nib gets 3 checks. It's phenomenal. It's great. I love it. And that really would bump up the rating from my perspective. The look of the pen gets 2 checks, and the build and design gets 2 checks. Why isn't it more? Well, it is a little heavy. It is a little shiny. It is a little slippery. You know, there are little things that detract from it. I think for the price, you could do a lot worse than this pen. So hopefully you've enjoyed this look at another pen. I feel very privileged to be able to show you 2 pens from the same maker, which share some things in common and also have some unique characteristics. And visually, I could definitely enjoy this pen on many levels visually. So thank you all very much for watching. I cannot stress how very, very smooth this nib is. About as smooth a nib as I've written with recently. I hope this video finds all of you safe, healthy, and happy, enjoying your pens. Maybe excited about getting a new pen. Certainly excites me. And we've reached the end of this video. I'm working on a bunch more, so stay tuned. We're going to say bye. A little bit out of order. We're going to say... So you saw an example of not opening up the blind cap. And I usually open it up pretty much that far. Give the ink a little time, and yes, it is a writer. Yep, see, started up pretty good. Now we can write bye till the next video.